Hi everyone, in this video I want to show you how to create this pop art image in Blender with little to even no experience in that software. If you think you need to study art and learn CG for 3 years in order to create stuff like this, I really hope this video will prove you wrong. Simply follow my instructions. Of course, it would be great if you had just a little bit of experience in Blender, but that's why I've created the Absolute Beginners course, which is available for free on YouTube. Link is in the video description. Without a further ado, let's now jump into it. So I start by deleting everything from my clean Blender file and dragging and dropping the reference into the 3D viewport. I'm pressing Alt-R and Alt-G to zero the rotation and location of my image. And by the way, the reference plus the entire scene are available for you to download from the link in the video description. But now let's start working. So we are going to begin by creating one of the TVs we can see here. To do that, I'm going to decrease the transparency of the reference just a little bit, maybe by half. So the viewport is a bit clearer for us. I'm gonna create a plane this time, not a cube as we always do, and move it just a little bit up so it doesn't overlap with the reference. Now I'm scaling the plane down and trying to match the main red element of the TV. Now I'm entering the edit mode, switching to the edge selection and simply moving the edges like this so they match the TV outline. Let's now add one loop cut by pressing Ctrl R and one more here and one more here and one more here. So now we've divided the plane and have the very basic shape of our TV. Now I'm gonna select the middle face we have just created by adding the edge loops. I'm going to duplicate it by pressing Shift D, move it a little bit up within the Z-axis. Now I'm going to extrude it downwards, and with this face selected, I'm going to just delete it. So I'm pressing the X key and deleting the face. I'm leaving the edit mode, and now in the object mode, I'm going to add the subdivision surface modifier. So once I do that, you can see our TV set becomes quite deformed. Let me right click and change the shading to smooth. And I would suggest already applying some basic materials at this point just to have a better vision of what's happening with our model. So I'm going to add the red material. I will skip all the settings here for now, and I'm only going to focus on the viewport display settings. So let me choose, I'm going to choose this red color, and I'm going to create one more shader, call it screen. Again, I'm going to just focus on the viewport display settings. Choose this bluish color. Now in the edit mode, I'm going to press L key, hovering over this element and hit assign here. So we have the material division, but the shape of the screen looks pretty deformed. And that's why I'm going to get back to the edit mode and start adding new edge loops. So I'm pressing Ctrl R, scrolling up, left clicking, 0, enter. Now I'm going to press S, X, and move the edge loops to the sides. Exactly the same procedure here. Ctrl R, scroll up, left click, 0, enter, S, Y. So if you're new to Blender, this might be a bit complicated, but it really isn't. I'm now pressing the L key, moving the screen down, just checking if it matches the reference at the corners. I think it looks pretty good. Perhaps we can move those edge loops. So I'm selecting them with my Alt key pressed to select the entire edge loop, not just one edge like that. And I think we are good to go with the rest of the model. So I'm going to press Ctrl R here, just add one more edge loop. So we have this nice roundness. I'm going to move this edge loop slightly to the center. So holding Alt, left clicking, and using the gizmo. Boom. And we have the very base for our TV. I'm going to select this entire element and simply extrude it down right now. And I'm going to add 2 edge loops here again. So again, the same procedure, just scaling these 2 edge loops up. So we have a better shape here. We can actually delete this edge loop, but no, maybe let's leave it. Maybe we will add some of the details later. Let's now add those round things, whatever you call them. I'm gonna press Shift A, select circle, and before I start working, I will adjust the vertices here. So let's set them to 16, yeah, not 26. We don't need that many verticals here, especially when we are using the subdivision modifier that adds those extra verticals for us. So I'm just freely scaling the newly added object, moving it somewhere here. Let me now extrude it upwards within the z-axis. So E, then Z, now E. I'm gonna hit escape and S to scale down. Yeah, let's press E again, escape, now Alt M, and merge everything at center. I'm gonna hit L key and apply the screen material to this detail. Yeah, let's now press Shift D to duplicate it and Y to move it downwards. This way we have already created some extra stuff. I will now focus on those lines we can see here. Maybe this is more clear on the side. So to create them, we will need another shader. Let's call it purple. And to save ourselves some time, I'm just gonna select this face, press Shift D to duplicate it, Z to move it upwards within the Z axis. I'm gonna add again 2 edge loops, scale them within the X axis, so S and then X. Now ctrl R, S, Y. Is it okay? Yeah, I think it is. So let's extrude it downwards. Without deselecting those faces, let's delete them. So we have this nice sharp edge at the bottom, and pressing L key, I'm applying the purple shader. Let's change its color to something bluish like this, maybe something darker and less saturated. I'm setting up those colors because later we can also copy them to the actual shader settings. Now I'm scaling this entire element down. And now instead of scaling it like this, you can see the distance of those edges at the ends will change as well. So I want to avoid this. I will simply switch to the vertex selection, press B to box select, and move those elements to the sides. So I keep the distance of the edge loop here at the end uniform. So this way you can see I'm able to quickly add those kinds of details. Let's move it down, see how it looks. Pretty good. Let's now go to the wireframe view again, Shift D, Y, move it upwards. Now Shift D, Y again, pressing R, 90 and enter. So we rotate this detail. Let's move it here. Scale it down. I think, yeah, this one and this one and this one, these are thinner just a little bit. So let's first scale it down like this. I'm gonna press B, middle mouse button to deselect those. Use a gizmo to move these down. And now I'm just gonna press B normally and move this part up. So with the L key, I'm selecting the entire element, Shift D, X, Shift D, and X again, and I'm helping myself with the gizmo. So let's maybe move this like that. So I think we're getting somewhere. Maybe we need to adjust the shader just a little bit. Yeah. So yeah, I think we still have to work a little bit more, so let's keep adding the details. So we need to work on those sliders, or whatever you want to call them. I'm going to select this element, Shift D, X, rotate by 90 degrees. Maybe let's move it here because we have a better visibility. Let's select these vertices, move them here, select the entire element, move back here. I don't know why I prefer the right TV than the central one. Don't judge me for that. Anyways, yeah, you can see I've already copied these two parts, and we still need to create something here. I think it's kind of a grid element, but we need another shader for that. So I'm just gonna copy this part, scale it within the y-axis. Let's create the orange shader, assign it, change the color to orange, see how it looks. Yeah, pretty good. Scale within the x-axis, or maybe not, maybe let's just move it like that. I'm gonna cheat a little bit on this element, so you might want to pay attention, because normally we would have to maybe divide something here, apply the shaders, then play around with it, but the faster and the more simple you do things, the better. So I'm just gonna press Shift R right now. Shift R repeats the last operation I did, which was simply copying this object. And now I'm just gonna scale those three elements within the x-axis. I'm gonna select this element, duplicate it, move somewhere here, rotate within the 90 degrees, move it here. We might see some overlapping happening here, but it shouldn't be a problem. Let's move it here again. See if the overlaps are problematic. Not really, as you can see. So with our materials visible, let's just freely move those parts so they form something like a grid. Maybe we need to scale these two a little bit within the x-axis, so here at the corners it looks better. Yeah, but that's basically it. I won't be digging deeper into that element. Let me now simply select this face, duplicate it, and let's scale it up just like that and push slightly below. I'm gonna switch to the orthographic view, slightly below those parts we have just added. So now I'm gonna keep scaling up, switch to the vertices, press B to deselect those two. Now I'm gonna press Ctrl and numpad plus, nice English like. Yeah, numpad plus, I don't know how to pronounce it, sorry. And now I'm just gonna, pressing the Ctrl and numpad plus increases the selection. So this allows me to reselect everything else back without, you know, pressing the B or whatever. Anyways, now I need to add extra loop cuts, and when I press Ctrl R, you can see they only appear somewhere around those other elements, so you need to just point precisely. I'm gonna press Ctrl R again, 0 enter, S Y, and boom. I think we have a pretty nice result. Maybe let's add just those very few lines. So I'm gonna duplicate this element, move it downwards, S Y, now Shift D, Y, move it here, and Shift R, so we duplicate it. So as you can see, the way I'm trying to model anything in Blender is wasting as little time as possible. So if I already have something that has a circle within it, something that has edge loops within it, like those parts, I try to duplicate them and modify them, and that's it, without modeling from scratch every of the single part. So let's now move to this upper antenna. As I just said, I want to save as much time as possible when modeling, so I'm going to press Shift A, create a UV sphere, which is huge by default. Let's scale it down, switch to the vertices, switch to the wireframe view, and let's delete everything here. Now I'm going to press L, move it to this area. If Blender slows down for you with a subdivision modifier enabled, you can simply disable its view in the edit mode, and then everything works fine. Let's maybe delete this row of vertices as well. Yeah, and let's keep scaling and reshaping this part. So now I'm gonna move here to see how it looks. Yeah, it's a little bit too big, so I'm simply gonna scale it within the z-axis, just so it looks nice from the top view. And by the way, we still need to add one more shader. Let's scale it slightly more. I'm gonna apply the shade smooth and add one more material. So let's call it whatever, metal maybe. Let's call it metal, leave the... Okay, let's add a gray color and a sign. Now we have to add those, just a very few last details. And again, let's try recycling as much as we can. I'm gonna select this element, duplicate it, move it here, scale down, and I think I'm good with it. Let's apply the probable shader. See how it looks like? Pretty good. Now we need to create this pipe, whatever we want to call it. Let's maybe just move it down and scale it up slightly. So I can select this row, this circle of vertices. I'm pressing Alt key and left clicking. Now I will duplicate it, rotate within the y-axis and extrude by pressing the E key. So we have a pipe element. I'm gonna press Ctrl numpad plus, apply the purple shader, scale it down. I think it's enough. I'm gonna actually copy it here because this element looks similar, so I already have it ready and waiting for me. Now I will just rotate this part, move it like that, move it downwards, and yeah, it's all done. Let me just move both of those elements down, and to copy them here, I will just focus my 3D cursor on this element, so Shift S right now, cursor to selected. I'm gonna select both of those elements. I'm gonna press Shift D, escape. Now I'm gonna press dot key, change the pivot point to 3D cursor, and I'm gonna press Ctrl M to mirror the element. So now I need to press X and it's mirrored there. But if I exit the edit mode and check the face orientation, you can see we have red and blue colors here. So if you paid attention in one of my last tutorials, we need to make everything either blue or red. So I'm gonna press Shift N in the edit mode, and Blender calculates the face orientation automatically for me. We're almost there, so let's just keep going. I'm gonna disable the face orientation preview, switch to the vertices, select the pipe. I think I need to change the pivot point back to the active element, or median point. I think it's better. Yeah, let's scale the pipe up. Now scale it within the X axis, move it slightly here, and we need to create those leggy legs kind of things. Again, let's try to recycle as much as possible. I'm gonna copy this element, scale it back within the x-axis so it's a little bit more uniform, rotate within the 180 degrees, and yeah, what can we do now? I think we don't need all those vertices. Let's simply scale it like this. Oops, I just pressed the H key. So if it happens to you, just press Alt H. And I pressed it again. It's just next to the G key, so yeah, sorry for that. I'm gonna scale this down and extrude upwards within the y-axis. Boom, I think we are good with this element. So I'm gonna assign the purple shader, copy this part here, and the bell is ringing in the background to tell us that the TV is now ready. I know these were pretty intense 20 minutes of modeling, but please don't give up. We have the hardest part behind ourselves, and now let's just jump into the juicy stuff. So we're gonna now add the materials, set up a camera, prepare a rendering, and there is a bonus at the end of the video. So the TV looks great, but now we need to create the background. I'm gonna select it and press H to hide it. Now I'm gonna press Shift A to create a new plane, scale it up slightly, move up so it doesn't overlap. Now in the edit mode, I'm gonna press 2, select one of the edges, 1, 2, 3 changes between the vertex edge face selection, so 2 is for edges. Now I'm going to press Ctrl R, add 2 new loop cuts. I need to readjust this one, so just selecting it and pushing upwards. Now Ctrl R again, and I'm adding 4 more edge loops. So you can see we have this element created. Now we need to move the reference colors to our object, and to do that I'm going to move the reference slightly, increase the transparency to 100%. Now I'm going to create, let's say, 5 material slots within this object and create some material within the first slot. So now within the color settings I can just click this color picker, select a color I want to be applied, and there you have it. That's basically everything you have to do. But now we need to create additional shaders based, or not necessarily based, we can just click new. And yeah, step by step we have to work our way down. So we have every single material copied, and you can see I copied the colors but nothing is visible here, and that's because we still need to apply this material slot with this yellowy material to those geometry elements. So let me do this right now, and yeah, let's repeat it. I'm gonna click new. Now I'm gonna select color picker, pick up this color. Now do the same for the viewport display. Now I'm gonna enter the edit mode, select these 2 faces and apply this material to them. So we have to do it with every single material, with every single color. So I'm gonna get back to you once it's all done. Now we are talking. Let's unhide the TV very quickly by pressing Alt H. Oh yeah, it's here. And let's move the plane slightly downwards so we can see everything we have just created. Now I'm gonna copy the TV, pressing Alt D, and that creates an instance of an object, meaning if I edit anything within one of the instances, the changes will be also applied to every other instance within the scene. So let's say if I want to change the shaders within one object, if I remove a material, the change will be also applied to every other instance of that object. I'm going to show you in a second what I mean by that. Let's just populate the entire scene with the TV screens, and you can see here we have the darker screens, so it would be good to have the same thing. In our case, I'm just gonna press Shift D to copy this object, hide it, delete this one, and unhide it again. So let's see what's gonna happen now. Right now, if I enter the edit mode and modify this instance, for example, you can see the edit mode is displayed everywhere around the scene. So let me L-click on the screen and apply the purple shader to it, and the change is visible everywhere except this screen. And the reason for that is before I did this color replacement trick, I duplicated this object, but I used the Shift D shortcut. So what the Shift D does, it makes every single object technically independent, and what Alt D does, it creates an instance of an object. So for Blender, all of those objects are exactly the same. If I change them, the change is also visible everywhere else. So you might want to remember that technique. It's pretty useful if you work around the scene, want to manage it better, and yeah, apply quick changes. Let's now enter the rendered view and see the results of our work. So by default, they aren't that interesting. So let me press Shift A and add a sun lamp. I'm gonna move it upwards, rotate slightly, and activate the contact shadows. So at least we have some things happening, but still we forgot to fine-tune the materials on our TVs. So let me do it right now very quickly. I'm gonna go select the first material, pick the color picker, choose the red shader, the red color. Now with the screen, I'm gonna go with this blue color here, with purple. I'm gonna go with this dark purple color here. As for the orange, let's maybe use this one from here. So like that. And as for the metal, let me just do the shader myself. So I'm increasing the metallic value here slightly and decreasing the color. So, oh, that was way too much. Sorry. So far, so bad, I would say. We still need to fine-tune it. I think we might need to adjust the sun a little bit more. So let me select it right now and keep rotating. So until we get those nice long shadows, maybe even a bit more. At some point it doesn't make sense, so let's try to find this threshold. I think this is okay, but the shadows are a bit too dark and the color is a little bit too bright, I think. So let's reduce the sun strength. And yeah, I'm thinking how to reduce this shadow effect, and we need to go to the environment settings. So if I boost up the environment to 0.1, you see we get this wash out colors again. So let's now reduce the strength of the environment to 0.4. And I think it looks pretty good right now, except the colors are washed out a little bit more, a little bit too much, sorry. So let's go to the render settings, color management, and let's disable the filmic view like calculation, and let's just go with the defaults. So now when we switch to the defaults, I think the colors are much more interesting. Perhaps we can even increase the exposure just a little bit so they are even more visible. Yeah, honestly, I would say this is pretty much what we are looking for in terms of colors, at least. You can see the shades more or less match to what we were having in the reference. Let's now add a camera and create a rendering. So I'm simply gonna press Shift A, select camera from the list, move it upwards just like that, and hit the button we have here. So now we're in the camera view. I'm gonna add one more 3D viewport so I can move the camera faster. And yeah, you can see I'm simply lifting it up. Within the camera settings, if you don't want to see the environment, you can go to the viewport display, or oh yeah, sorry, it's here. The new menus, they are quite hard to read. And here within those Passepartout options, you can simply go full strength, and yeah, you will see how your camera looks like. So now what you have to do is simply pressing F12 and your rendering will be created. It will have the resolution you can set up here in the output settings. There will be a new window popping up, and boom, this is your pop art image created entirely in Blender. To save the image within the new window, you simply go to the settings here, select Save As or Shift S, choose your file format, let's say JPEG, RGB, 100%, and save wherever you want. If by mistake you close this newly created window, you can also go to this rendering tab here, and your rendering should be visible here. If it's not, you can just click here and choose it from all the images that are available in your Blender file. Now, I know we are 30 minutes in and you're probably tired as I am, but stay strong. I still want to show you one great thing, the bonus I promised, and it's going to be an animation loop you can create from the scene we have just worked on. To create an animated loop in our scene, first we need to apply one more cool trick. So I'm gonna hide the camera, the sun, delete the reference. We don't need those elements for now. I'm gonna press A to select everything. Now I'm gonna hold Shift left click on the background, and now I'm gonna press Ctrl J to join everything together. Now, when I go to the modifiers, I'm able to apply the array modifier, and what you can see immediately happening is another copy of our object appearing. So if I increase the count, the amount of copies will also increase. So what if we want to have all of those copies distributed within the y-axis, we simply add another array modifier, but we need to change the value here. So let's type in 1 and let's type in 0 here. Now I'm going to increase the count a few more times, and boom, this is what you have. Let's switch to the perspective. Let's switch to the rendered view, unhide everything, and we have this amazing effect, like a manufactory of televisions or whatever. But yeah, I think it looks pretty cool. You can just have fun playing around with it. But let's go back to the camera and now animate the loop. The first thing I'm gonna do is selecting the camera, finding it here, and creating the first keyframe. So I'm moving my timeline to the first frame, pressing I key and choosing location. Now our camera is recorded here. We want to have 5-second loop of 60 frames per second. So let's increase the amount of frames to 300. 5 multiplied by 60 gives us 300. And now let's move to the final frame, move our camera somewhere where we see this bottom pattern, let's say those two colors occurring again. It depends what kind of animation loop you want to have, but let's say we move to somewhere here. I think it's not the right pattern. Like, I think this is the right one. Yeah. And now you want to zoom in very closely and simply move your camera by pressing the G key, holding the Shift key. So here at the corner, the colors are matched almost perfectly, but it doesn't have to be pixel perfect. Now when you zoom out, you can press I key again, choose location, and now preview your loop. You just need to switch to the 60 frames per second first. So let's hit the spacebar and see what happens. Let's also disable the overlays. So what we have right now looks pretty good. We only need to get rid of this acceleration, deceleration effect. In order to do that, let's switch to the graph editor. I'm going to press Ctrl spacebar to go full screen just so you see better. I'm going to press A to select everything, V, and choose vector settings here. So all the handles switch like that. And now when we go back, hit spacebar, you will see we have this nice smooth motion without any distractions. And yeah, it looks like an infinite loop of televisions, colors, and cool stuff. Now, if you want to save the animation to the file, you go to the output settings here, set up the resolution. By default, it's 1080p. I think it's okay. Let's shrink it. And here within the output settings, you can choose your file format. I would suggest going with this one. And here in the encoding settings, you can choose the quality. I usually go with the high quality. And as a container, I'm choosing MPEG 4. If you're a Mac user, you might choose a QuickTime. And yeah, that's basically it. What you have to do right now, it's similar as with a static rendering. So you can press Ctrl F12 instead of F12. When you do this, there will be new window popping up and the animation will be saved to the directory you can choose here. So by default on Windows, it's a temp folder. And there you have it. Good job staying with me for those 5 extra minutes, because right now you not only know how to create this cool static rendering, but how to animate it and create this infinite loop. Thank you everyone for watching. I really hope this video was informative, and remember you can download the entire scene from the Chocofur Store. Link is in the video description. You may also consider donating to Blender Foundation and helping out the developers in creating this amazing piece of software. Thanks again everyone, and see you in the next video. Bye bye!